Yeah, good morning, good morning. Good morning, students. All right, so photosynthesis is what I'll be looking at now. Now, the notes, I would have sent the notes, I think sometime ago, and I would have also sent it a while ago. I post the notes on the Google Classroom platform, so I'm gonna go through the concept. Now, for the entire week this week, teachers actually having all type of meetings and workshop because presently we actually have a workshop going on. I just up out of the workshop to accommodate you guys. Right. So photosynthesis. Now this is a process that actually of course take place in plants, which of course would be a living thing. So in terms of human being, this process does not take place inside of our body. And looking at the first point, you will see what would be the definition for it. And they are saying, of course, it is a process by which plants make their own food. Right, so definitely in looking at that pointer, you can now see that there's a significant difference between human being and plants in terms of we sharing the same cycle in terms of being living things. So human being cannot make their own food, but of course we consume food. As for plants, it is the total opposite, which of course plants can manufacture or make their own food. So that is why we depend on plant directly or indirectly for food. What do I mean whenever I said that we depend on them for food directly or indirectly is that, let's say for example you're eating sweet potato, sweet pepper, tomato, carrot. You're literally eating those. And then of course that is you depending on them directly for food. Now let's say for example you're eating bread. Now that would be indirectly, because bread of course um it will come from flour or what is known as wheat, which of course comes from a particular plant. So that is we depending on plant indirectly, meaning that we are eating some form of food product, but that food product went through some form of processing. But you pick an orange, you pick a mango, a coconut, you're eating cane. That is you depending or eating the food directly from plant. So once you're being asked to give a definition for it, then definitely that first pointer is the definition. Now, as for this process, there are a lot of things that are needed or must be present in order for this process to take place. And of course, the second pointer give you those things. So they are saying that the raw materials are. So definitely I will be asking you to give me or tell me what are the or I will ask you what are the raw materials for photosynthesis. And they are saying that water, which of course the plant would obtain the water from the soil, and of course we have a gas that is known as carbon dioxide, which would be obtained from the atmosphere. So those are the two raw materials for photosynthesis. So normally when persons see the term photosynthesis, they would say that, I mean, based on the pronunciation and based on the length of the word, it might be seem something that going to be confusing. Now, in you looking at this process, it is just that you have to divide up the process into different segments or learning the different aspect, which of course, as you can see, the first thing we looked at is the definition, what it means. And of course, that is simply, in a nutshell, it is a process by which plants make their own food. Now, if plants are making their own food, then they're gonna need some form of materials. They're gonna need some things must be present. And again, that's where the second pointer come into play, where water and of course carbon dioxide, those are considered to be the raw products or the raw materials, I should actually say. So where the plants gonna get these raw materials? Two places. The water will come from the soil, and the carbon dioxide will come from the air or the atmosphere where that surrounds the plant, of course. Now, in making the process, some form of energy is needed, and that's where pointer 3 come into play. They are saying that the energy from sunlight is used to split water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen. Right. So the second pointer, the third pointer, have more than one concept that you need to be aware of. The first concept for the third pointer is that the energy, because of course this process that is known as photosynthesis is gonna need some form of energy to allow that process to take place. So the energy will come from the sunlight. So that is one concept from the third pointer that you need to understand. The next concept that you need to understand is what is the role of the energy. When the energy comes from the sunlight, what the plant use that energy to do. Can anybody answer that question? The energy that comes from the sunlight during photosynthesis, what the plant use that energy to do? Can someone tell me that? It's in pointer 3. The energy that comes from the sunlight, what plants use that energy to do? Right, very good, perfect. Right, and that is definitely a common question. So the energy that comes from the sunlight, or the energy that plants absorb from the sunlight, what is the role, what is the function, what is the reason for that energy to be absorbed by the plant? And that is correct. So the energy is used to split the water. So that same water that the plant did absorb or take up from the soil, what they are saying is that plants don't just use the water like that. It need to further break it down. So that is why they said that the energy not gonna split the water. It's gonna divide it into two new, or gonna make two new products from that water. One is oxygen, and the other one is hydrogen. So in terms of the oxygen, persons by now should know that human being, for example, we breathe in oxygen. We take in oxygen from the atmosphere. So this is where we get our oxygen from. When the sunlight split the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen, plants normally give off, or if you want to say let off or let out oxygen to the atmosphere, because plants don't need oxygen. There's no process in plants that require the service of oxygen. So plants basically just give off oxygen as a waste material to the atmosphere. So we don't, like human being, we breathe in that oxygen. So that is how we get the oxygen. So if I should ask you where human being get the oxygen that we breathe in from the atmosphere, so now you can answer and tell me that from the process of photosynthesis that take place in plants. That's where oxygen is produced. So the fourth pointer now, sunlight also help to convert carbon dioxide and water to glucose. Now I'm going to move on to a diagram to explain that fourth pointer. Now looking at the second slide now, the heading, you're seeing the heading say stages of photosynthesis. Now what this means is that this process, photosynthesis, it is actually divided into two different stages. And looking at the screen, you will see the diagram. There you will see the image there to the right of the screen. The top section, it is labeled light reaction. If you look to the side, you will see the labeling in all caps, light reaction. Down the bottom, it is labeled dark reaction. And if you realize, we have two different color shaded. The green one represent the light reaction stage, and the darker one, the grayish one, represent the dark reaction stage. So right away, I can ask you the question, how many stages we have in photosynthesis? Then you should tell me that there are two stages, and the two stages are light reaction stage and the dark reaction stage. Now, before we even look at the notes, I'm just gonna look at the diagram. I'm gonna enlarge the diagram so you can see it much clearer. I soon share about the screen. Right, so this is the diagram. So looking, I'm gonna start from the top there. As you can see, light absorbed by chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is a part of the plant leaf, and that is the part of the plant leaf that actually trap the energy from the sunlight. So the chlorophyll, that is the function for chlorophyll. Now you can see, looking at the yellow arrow, you see water. Then you're seeing they say water from the soil, and we would have established that from the previous slide that plants get the water from the soil. Now you're seeing oxygen to the air. So what it is saying is that in the light reaction stage, so there's a reason why they call it the light reaction stage, you know. They call it the light reaction stage because sunlight is used in this stage. So like during the course of the day when the sun is shining, as for photosynthesis, it is the light reaction stage that is taking place. So during the daytime when the sun is shining, that's when the light reaction stage take place. So during the daylight, now when the sun is shining, once the energy is absorbed by the chlorophyll or trapped in the leaf of the plant, then of course that sun energy, that energy that comes from the sun, presently what is going on now is that energy is actually dividing or splitting up the water molecule into two substances, oxygen and hydrogen. So the arrow here is showing you that the oxygen is now being given off or being let out by the plant to the atmosphere. So plants, yes, they produce oxygen, but plants they don't need oxygen. They just give off oxygen to the atmosphere. Now, following the arrow that comes from water, because if you realize we have the yellow arrow, so the yellow represent the energy or represent the sunlight. Going towards water, now leaving water, you will have two arrows. One is showing oxygen, and this one now is showing hydrogen. Now, if you study the image carefully, you will realize that hydrogen go all the way down to the dark reaction stage. So that's the second stage of photosynthesis. Now, we call it dark reaction simply because this stage take place at night. So it take place in the dark. So no light need to be present. So what is happening during the dark reaction stage is that hydrogen, which of course comes from the light reaction stage, actually combine with this gas that is called carbon dioxide. So hydrogen combine with carbon dioxide to form this nutrient that is known as glucose. And of course, glucose, it is a form of carbohydrate. And glucose, it have a sweetness taste in terms of how it tastes. So like plants like, for example, sugar cane, orange, and any fruit that actually give you a sweet taste, it is the glucose that actually give you that sweet taste. Now I'm gonna give you a scenario with cane, sugar cane. Now I don't know if any student know of this thing for sugar cane, where if you plant sugar cane in shady, that means you plant the sugar cane on some whole heap of tree. No sunlight now catch it. That sugar cane have a tendency to be fresh. And the reason why it going to be fresh is simply because the sunlight is not shining on it. And when you look at the process of photosynthesis, you will realize that the energy that comes from sunlight is very important, because that energy is what going to split the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen. And in order for the sugar cane to make glucose, the sugar cane going to need hydrogen to actually join with oxygen. So once the hydrogen join with oxygen, that is what will give you glucose, and glucose is what make the sugar cane sweet. So if the sugar cane is planted under shady, then that simply means that it will not get enough sunlight. And once it is not getting enough sunlight, then there will not be enough energy to split the water molecule to form a lot of hydrogen. Because the fact that it is in the shady, it does not necessarily mean that it will not have any hydrogen, no. Just that it will not have enough to make it sweet in comparison to the sugar cane that will be planted in direct sunlight. So if in order to get sweet sugar cane, it is best to plant it in direct sunlight, simply because of how the process of photosynthesis is structured, meaning that there are two stages. One stage is called a light reaction stage, and the other one is called a dark reaction stage. And it is light reaction because sunlight need to be present in order for the light reaction stage to actually take place. So that is a very important concept to remember, especially if, of course, you want to really get some sweet sugar cane. I'm going to share my screen here. Right, so that is looking at the diagram. Now I'm gonna now look at the notes, and pretty much almost gonna be the same explanation because the notes is actually talking about the diagram. So the first pointer, of course, we're looking at the light reaction stage now. So they are saying that this occurs, so this takes place when light energy from the sun is taken in by chlorophyll in chloroplast. So I can formulate a question from that first pointer and ask you which part of the plant take in, or which part of the plant absorb the energy from the sunlight. So you should tell me that it is this chlorophyll. And of course the chlorophyll, it is located within the chloroplast of your of the plant leaf. So that's what so the first point I just simply telling you which part of the plant actually absorb or take in the energy from the sunlight, which of course would be the chlorophyll, which is definitely located in the chloroplast. Now let's see what pointer number 2 is saying. So they are saying now that this energy that is absorbed by the chlorophyll, it is used to split the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen. And I would have just looked at that on the diagram where I said that the yellow arrow represents the energy from the sunlight, and it is pointing towards water. And then after now you're seeing two arrows coming from water, which of course oxygen to the air or the atmosphere, and then hydrogen continue down in the dark reaction stage. So the third point along is saying that the oxygen passes out of the plant as a waste product to the atmosphere. So them saying that it is a waste product just simply mean that plants don't need oxygen. Plants just produce oxygen during this process, and it is not really like the plant produces oxygen, because we have to remember that water is a compilation of different substances, and of course those substances that make water are hydrogen and oxygen. So the energy from the sunlight just separate these two materials and send them to whichever direction or where the plant wishes for them to go. Alright, in the dark reaction stage now. So this is a second stage of photosynthesis. So they are saying this is where hydrogen join or combines with carbon dioxide to produce sugar slash glucose. So you can say sugar or you can say glucose. So these of course are nutrients. Now as for the carbon dioxide, this will be obtained from the atmosphere. And of course human being, we release carbon dioxide as a waste material, because our body cells produce carbon dioxide, which we don't need it. So it is just a waste material that is produced during a process. Just like in plants, plants produce oxygen during a process. So when you look at this situation, you will realize that plants depend on human being for a particular gas, and human being depend on plants for a particular gas. So we depend on plants for oxygen, and plants depend on we for carbon dioxide. And that is why they normally said that deforestation, you must not get into the habit of cutting down plants. Anywhere you live, try to have some form of plants, whether fruit tree or some flowers. Try to have some form of plants, because it is very important to have plants around you. And that is simple because plants produce oxygen. Nothing else produce oxygen unless you're gonna create some oxygen in the labs. Like for example, those oxygen pans that they are giving like COVID persons oxygen from. Those oxygens they are produced in labs. And there's no way human being can produce enough oxygen for everybody on earth. Because you will realize that in Jamaica here, in United States and different parts of the world, COVID patients are dying as a result of lack of oxygen. So that simply means that we cannot provide the amount of oxygen fast enough that persons need. So plants naturally produce oxygen. So that is why it is very important, um, whichever environment you're in, to have plants around you, because that's how you get the oxygen to survive from plants. Right, so in the dark reaction stage, it is just a simple process that takes place here. Carbon dioxide join or combine with hydrogen to form what is known as glucose. Now the equation, so of course we have two equations that you must know them. We have the worded equation and we have the chemical, or if you want to say the symbolic equation. That is where we use different symbols. So as for the carbon dioxide, that is the worded equation plus water. Because remember that at the initial stage of the presentation, I would have said that there are two materials that are needed for photosynthesis to take place: carbon dioxide and water. And that's what you're seeing in the equation now. Carbon dioxide as one material, water as the other raw material. Of course, in the presence of sunlight, so if you look at it, you will see a forward arrow, sunlight at the top, chlorophyll at the bottom. And this on the right side of the arrow now, that's where you will now find the products for photosynthesis, where the product, of course, would be sugar, or if you want to say glucose plus oxygen. So those are three products of photo. Those are two products of photosynthesis, because sugar and glucose is basically the same thing, just a change of term. And then below, of course, we have the chemical or the symbolic equation. So the symbols for carbon dioxide is 6CO2. That is carbon dioxide. That is the formula. That is the chemical equation for carbon dioxide. As in for water now, it is 6H2O. Now, if you realize during photosynthesis, sunlight, of course, split water into hydrogen and oxygen. And looking at the equation, you realize that the equation for water, it is showing that hydrogen and oxygens are present. You see that in the equation? Students? Hello? No, I'm asking you, in looking at the chemical equation, are you seeing that hydrogen and oxygens are present? Are you not? You see, widen the equation itself? All right, all right, all right. In widening the equation, I'm gonna have to stop share that, extend it. I soon come. You soon get it. Are you seeing it better now? All right, yes. Right. So I'm saying that so we have the two equation there. So the carbon dioxide up at the worded section. Looking at the chemical equation, carbon dioxide. If you want to know the formula for those person who do chemistry, for example, it is 6CO2. That is carbon dioxide plus water, and the chemical formula, the equation for water is 6H2O. And I'm saying that if you realize that while looking at photosynthesis, the note said that the energy that comes from the sunlight actually split water into two molecules, hydrogen and oxygen. So I'm saying that if you look at the equation, you will see that yes, that is definitely true. Because it is saying that we have 6 molecules of the hydrogen there and 2 molecules of the oxygen. So these two are what make up water. And the sunlight, of course, is the condition that is necessary for photosynthesis. So as for photosynthesis, there are 4 things that I wanted to remember. 1 is the definition. 2, the raw materials. 3, the condition that is needed. And 4, the products. So once you see that word photosynthesis, always make sure you remember 4 things about it. 1 is the definition. So that simply means make sure you can define it. 2, you should be able to tell me the raw materials that are needed for this process to take place. And 3, you need to tell me the condition that is needed, what need to be present for this process to take place. And 4, the products of photosynthesis. And I'm going to tell you those 4 now. So as I said, 4 things that you must always remember for photosynthesis. 1 is the definition. I'm sure no see on the slide you see the definition, because I said that the first slide there, the first pointer, that's the definition. The process by which plants make their own food. And the second thing I said that I want you to always remember the raw materials that are needed for photosynthesis. And the second point I give you that water and carbon dioxide. And the next thing I said that the third thing is the condition. What condition? And the condition that is needed is the presence of sunlight that is needed. And the fourth thing that you must know, of course, are the products. And the products of photosynthesis are, of course, oxygen and glucose. And all of those in the slide. So all 3 slides that I would have looked at, the 3 slides basically cover those 4 things that I say you should always remember once you see that term photosynthesis. Its function, its definition, the process by which plants make food, the raw materials that this process need, of course water and carbon dioxide, the condition that is necessary, and that would be present of sunlight, and of course the products would be oxygen and glucose, or if you want to say sugar. Now all plant leaves help photosynthesis. So in terms of the process, we basically finish the process as to what happens. So we're just looking at some things that are important to this process. So all plant leaves help this process. So they are saying that the leaves of plants, they are thin, and the fact that they are thin, it increases what is known as the surface area. So the surface area, so the fact that they are flat and thin, increase the surface area. So that means that the leaves of plants normally broad enough to trap as much energy as possible. So when you're looking at plants, the plants that have a broader leaf, those plants normally of course, will trap more energy from the sunlight because of a larger surface area. Now, when you look at plants that give you this nutrient that is known as carbohydrate, because glucose and sugar, those are carbohydrate, So plants like yam, you realize how much leaf depend yam, and that is simply because yam give you carbohydrate, and in order for the yam to provide carbohydrate to produce this energy, this nutrient, it gonna need a lot of hydrogen, and of course hydrogen will come from water after being split by that energy that comes from the sunlight. um, if you look at dasheen, for example, for those persons who know dasheen plant, the leaves of dasheen, they are extremely large, and that again is simply because dasheen give you carbohydrate. So having those broad leaves um, will enable the plant to trap more energy from sunlight. Banana is another plant that the nutrient that comes from banana is mostly carbohydrate. And if you realize how banana and plant leaves, how how broad they are, you will realize that when you eat the banana when it ripe, you see how sweet it be, and that is simply because the energy from the sunlight will split water into hydrogen and oxygen, which the hydrogen will combine with carbon dioxide to, of course, produce that glucose or that sugar, which will give that sweet taste. So the leaves, the second pointer is saying that the leaf absorb light energy, and that light energy is from the sunlight. Surfaces of the leaves contain tiny pores called stomata. So those are some tiny holes. So so it is within these small holes that carbon dioxide is now moved from the atmosphere and diffuse into those pores. So if you are wondering how the plants get the carbon dioxide, it is because of those small holes that are located within the leaves. Because as for the water, by now persons must know see it is the plant root that absorb the water. So if you plant one plant and you realize you have to water it every day or until it catch, this is why you water the plant, because the water is very important. When the plants absorb the water, the sunlight from the energy from the sunlight split that water into hydrogen and oxygen, and of course the rest is history in terms of what take place with these with the hydrogen as it continues down to the dark reaction stage. So oxygen produce will diffuse out, and we would have established that, saying that yes, plants produce or release oxygen, but it is of no use to plants. Plants don't need it. So plants basically just give off it to the atmosphere, and then of course it is useful to us. So that's why we breathe it in. Plants use some of the sugar they make for respiration. What this is saying that the sugar cane, for example, that we consume, the orange that we eat, so the plant produce all of these. So what they're saying is that some of the same energy, some of the same nutrient that plants produce, they use it for their own survival. Because plants don't make food just for human beings. No. Plants make food for themselves. It is just that based on how the earth and the world was created, we can get those food or nutrient from plants. So plants actually, they can survive by themselves, meaning that once the rain is falling and the sun is shining, then they can survive. Because you will realize that persons give plant fertilizer. Plant don't necessarily need fertilizer. We only give plants fertilizer so the plant can produce more, so we can get more food or more to sell. Because naturally the plants then can grow by themselves. It is just that with fertilizer now, they can grow bigger, they can grow larger. And the only reason why we fertilize plants is so that we can benefit, not necessarily for the benefit of the plant. So most sugar are converted to starch, right? So Starch, sugar, glucose, all those are example of a nutrient that is called carbohydrate. So we have carbohydrate, just that we have different types of carbohydrate. And some of the carbohydrate, they are sweet. So simple carbohydrate such as glucose is actually sweet. And we have complex carbohydrate that of course is called starch. So like in yam, it is definitely starch. In Irish potato, in sweet potato, it is starch. In dasheen, it is starch. In cocoa, it is starch. But once you're eating like orange, um, June plum, sugar cane, the type of carbohydrate in those plants are called simple carbohydrate, and those are what they call sugar or glucose. So whenever you're looking at nutrients and you see that adding carbohydrates, it should always have a S. And why it should be pluralized is simply because we have different types of carbohydrates. We have complex carbohydrates, which starch would be a complex carbohydrate, and we have simple carbohydrate, and glucose or sugar would be an example of a simple carbohydrate. So starch, the last point on the screen, starch is stored in the leaves, stem, and root. Right, so in the stem of the leaf, so the stem of the leaf is normally the middle part of the leaf. And the stuff anywhere from the middle part of the leaf come down to where the leaf actually join to the trunk of the plant. That is what is known as the stem. So they are saying that the carbohydrate normally stored there, and of course in the root of the plant. Their importance. Now this process must be important, and without even having notes after what you would have looked at a while ago, you must could have at least come up with one importance of this process that is known as photosynthesis. So it provides an energy source that can be used by other living organisms. And human being definitely is one of those organisms that benefit from the energy source. So when you eat the cane, the orange, the yam, the banana, the plantain, all those food you eat them and you get energy. So that is why they are saying that energy source. So this process of photosynthesis basically provide energy source where organisms such as human being, cow, goat, all those plants, all those animals that eat plants benefit from. And next important, it maintain the correct balance. Yes, Sumal, turn off your mic. Okay. Right, the second pointer, it maintain the correct balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. Very important, because if there is enough plant around you, then there will be the correct or the right amount of oxygen. If you don't have enough plant around you, then you're going to have limited or small amount of oxygen. As for carbon dioxide now, remember that human being produce carbon dioxide when we breathe out. When you light rubbish, carbon dioxide is produced. When you start a motor vehicle, carbon dioxide is produced. So in Mapen, for example, there is a lot more carbon dioxide than in your community that would not have so much vehicles and factories like down Mapen. Because the smoke that comes from factories, those also contain carbon dioxide. So when plants are present in environment where there's a lot of carbon dioxide, plants now would absorb this carbon dioxide. So that is why the second point is saying that photosynthesis basically create a balance between the amount of oxygen and the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, because this process is what give off oxygen to the atmosphere, and this process is what remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Last pointer, to provide food for the growing human population. Right, so that basically would sum up everything for Photosynthesis. So of course the notes I would have sent it in Google Classroom, and I think I would have just sent it in one format as the PowerPoint, but of course I'm going to convert it into the PDF and also the picture or image format. But I must tell students the only way your smart devices, for example, a tablet or phone, can read these different formats. For example, the PowerPoint format, you have to download a app on your phone that can read PowerPoint format. So you just go into into Google Play Store and type in PowerPoint reader application, PDF reader application, Microsoft Office reader application. You have to download all of those apps on your phone so that they can open the different formats. If you don't have the different apps that can open the different formats, then you're definitely not going to be able to open them. All right, so see you next class. The class time would have ended, so we definitely would have complete looking at photosynthesis in terms of me explaining the concept. So of course the link is there for the YouTube live for those persons who were not able to join class today, and for you who want to rewatch, because I'm quite sure that there can be a concept that you would not have understand clearly or that you would want to go over again. Then you can definitely use the video, so you can replay that. So thanks for coming, and please again remember to indicate in the WhatsApp group that you're present, and take care until next time.